So I do want to say thank you, Gary, for being here. Gary is the museum founder and director at the Cincinnati Type and Print Museum. And the Cincinnati Type and Print Museum is preserving the history of printing in Greater Cincinnati. They're creating an environment for artists to create handmade paper and print letterpress items. They're helping break the cycle of addiction by providing training, jobs, and dignity to the people of Price Hill. I won't get into Gary's long history because I know he's going to help share that. And we're really excited to have someone who is a printer here to tell us what you're doing down there and tell us more about your institution, Gary. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. My grandmother, who I dearly loved, who was from Irving, Kentucky, said that whenever I got in front of a group of people, that I must always wear a coat. So I have done that. I've met that obligation. But for you folks, I want to just take a moment and become a real printer, okay? And that's really what I am. Just realize you can't see the Cincinnati Type Print Museum. Okay? All right, now, because I'm a printer, we'll see how this goes. I'm gonna try to be high tech, and let's see, I go to screensaver, and I go to here, and I go to here. Okay. Hey, it looks like it worked. Okay. So welcome to the presentation about the Cincinnati Type and Print Museum. You'll figure out at the end, this is my passion. I'm a football guy, used to coach football, love football, played football. Always said I gave 4 years of my life to football, but it's more like 15 years. So I look at my life and I put it in respect of quarters. So if you're between 0 and 20, you're in your first quarter. Stephanie, that's you. If you're between 20 and 40, you're in your second quarter. And then they have the 40 to your halftime. Then if you're in your 40 to 60, that's your third quarter. And then when you're in 60 to 80, that's your fourth quarter. And that's where I am. Okay. If you go past 80, you're in overtime. But I truly believe that God put me in the printing industry, and I truly believe that quarter one, quarter two, quarter three was all for getting me ready for quarter four. And this is where I'm going to do my best work, is in my fourth quarter. As I said, I'm Gary Walton, Professor Emeritus at Cincinnati State. I'm the founder of the Cincinnati Type and Print Museum. And I truly believe my calling from God is to serve the printing industry. And I've never worked a day in my life. Never have. I just go have fun with printing all my life. Gotten very involved in the printing associations and just met some great people, both men and women in the printing industry. There you go. My love for printing started back in 1968. Anybody got an idea who was president in 1968? By the way, I'm an 8th grader. Yes, Jim, who's president? Ike. Ike is president. So you're listening to a really old dude, you know. Some of you probably remember Obama, maybe Bush, you know, but I go back to Ike, and I can remember the big campaign of 1960 when Kennedy and Nixon were running for each other, and everybody thought the world was going to come to him because we were going to elect a Catholic to be president. It didn't come to the end, by the way. But so I'm at Schwab Junior High School, and in 1968, everybody had to take, every man, I should say, had to take a lab or shop class. So I took metal, broke something, took wood shop, and on the plane, the piece of wood flew off and hit the wall. Took electric and somehow did something, the lights went out of the building. Then I took printing, and nothing went wrong. Nothing went wrong. I remember going to my counselor and saying, hey, could it be possible in the 9th grade for my 1 hour of shop, I just take printing the whole year? And he said, well, I don't know about that. So we went and talked to the instructor. The instructor loved it because now he's going to have a TA, right? And so for the 9th grade, for 1 hour every day in the morning, I took printing and just fell in love with it. And so from there, I went to University of Cincinnati, and I also went to Cincinnati State and graduated from Cincinnati State, and then graduated from the University of Cincinnati. And immediately got hired at Cincinnati to be a graphic arts instructor. And for the past 45 years, and I'm still teaching now, I've had the privilege of teaching at Cincinnati State and just love it. Always have a great group of kids to work with. Kids, I call them kids, they're young adults. But it's, like I said work, but never worked a day in my life. As we get into this presentation, realize I'm like Ben Franklin. I'm a printer. I'm not an artist. I wish it was. I can't even draw a straight line. Stick figures would look horrible, you know. So I'm a printer though. I can print pretty well. Okay. Anybody recognize where this picture was taken from? All right. Colonial Williamsburg. So if you go to Colonial Williamsburg, you get to see the young Ben Franklin, who was a printer. Today, this is the museum. So we're on State Street. Nope, I'm sorry, 8th Street, at the corner of 8th and State. And this is our building, which the city gave to us. And the city gave us $250,000 to renovate this building. And if you're on my Facebook page, which hopefully you will be now, you will have seen this picture, where last Sunday, a gentleman who was running away from the police crashed his SUV into our museum. And he back it up. Oh, hey. So on the right side, that building that you see, that's just a little office sitting up there that's being held by that post that you see there. So we're like, he came in and crashed into that. And so we're probably going to have to tear that piece down. But now the good news is that hopefully we'll be able to use the money from that, plus give the city, give me some more money, and I can build a third building alongside of that building to be able to house some of the very large presses that we have sitting in the warehouse. So hopefully God will work that out, and maybe a year from now, we'll show you pictures of the new building that we're going to have. Following Rick's example, and also now Stephanie's example, and I didn't plan this. I just following that. In case you're wondering, the museum is sitting on land that was once owned by the Shawnee and the Miami Indians, and they were the first settlers here in the Ohio River Valley. The Miami Indians were eventually chased down to Florida by Andrew Jackson, and so that's why we have Miami, Florida. And Miami University, where Aaron teaches, is named after the Miami people. So very happy about that. Not happy that we took their land, but very happy about that. Now you know that, but you know who was the first European settler to own the land that we live on? If you don't, first American to own the land that I'm sitting on was the great American patriot, John Dunlap. Who the heck is John Dunlap? All right, Stephanie, this is your chance for the chat. Tell me who John Dunlap is. I want you to impress me. You say you're printers. You should know this guy. Who's John Dunlap? Yeah. Stephanie, can you, is any answer?
Yeah, Erin might be, she might have a little insight more than other people, living there in Ohio.
So who is John Dunlap? He did something very famous.
Declaration of Independence?
Yes. Was that Aaron?
That was Aaron.
Hey,
you get all the gold stars, Aaron.
Gold stars for real. So yes, he was the first, an Irish printer. So on St. Patrick's Day, we should honor John Dunlap. I got a whole presentation later on. Maybe you want to do that in March on John Dunlap. And he was a great American. Fought alongside of George Washington pretty much in every battle. But on the first July 4th, there was no celebration. But on that day, John Dunlap was busy printing, as you see here, the Declaration of Independence. Notice at the bottom, only John Hancock signed it. The other representatives' names were not put on, but many of them took copies of this and sent them out to their friends. We believe this one is the one that George Washington had, and he read it to his troops in New York before the British come. He's going to have a terrible time there, but he read this. They were so inspired, they tore down the statue of George III, and the revolution really got swinging after the Battle of New York. So that's John Dunlap, great American patriot. Because he was good friends with Washington, they talked about land. And so after the revolution, he bought a lot of Ohio and Northern Kentucky. So he was the first European to own the land that the museum is sitting on. I can't go any further without mentioning my assistant, Jacob Simpson, who's the curator. He has just been a true blessing from God. We would not have accomplished half the things we've done the last year and a half if it wasn't for Jacob. I can't say enough good things for him. I don't pay him enough, just like Stephanie doesn't get paid enough. The nuns used to always say you get your reward in heaven. So I don't know if that's true or not. Okay. Our first donation came in 2014 when we got this Mealy vertical, which was a nice press. And those are two of my students. Having students makes it easy to get cheap labor. Then we were given a donation of a show card press, very nice proofing press. But what really we liked with that was we got 16 drawers of wooden type from 6 inches down to 1 inch. And that really, we were ready to go at that point. Then our third donation was from a dear friend of mine, Henry Sester of Ketmoy Printing. And he donated this 1917 12 by 18 press. This was the type of press that I ran when I was in the 8th grade and 9th grade at Schwab Middle School. So it's in our main lobby, and I have a strong attachment to this machine. Since then, we've acquired 10 more Chandler Price presses. So we have them from 7 to 11 images all the way up to a 12 by 18, which is a monster machine, which is sitting on the new building with the concrete floor. So we have in the old building, which is over 100 and some years old. And then the city really liked what we're doing, so they gave us money to build a new building attached to that, which is about only 2 years old. And the heavy equipment is in that room. But I've got so much heavy equipment, I need a third building. So this Sunday, we'll be celebrating our 4th anniversary. As I say, this museum that Mayor, what's his name? Cranley, Mayor Cranley, this is his museum, this is his legacy. He's the one who's gave us the donation, so hopefully he'll give us a third donation to be able to build that building. But God has been blessing us. We've done very well for 4 years. Our purpose is multifold. First, to preserve the history of printing and make people aware of career opportunities in print media. When you come for a tour, we are going to give you the book of the life and works of Johann Gutenberg and tell you all about him and his creation. We're going to show you all kinds of cool things to see. We give tours and we do events. So like this is a tour to a women's group. Last summer in 2019, we did a really cool thing. We went to the Cincinnati Reds ballpark with some 50,000 fans, and we took a press down with us, and we printed the 1919 World Series tickets, an authentic 1919 World Series ticket, but blown up. And we printed 25,000 of those and passed them out. So just a great way of getting it out. We were on the big camera, or big screen on the ballpark. We're on television. So everybody watching the game that day saw us on television. It was a great event and making people aware of letterpress printing. So, and we had that scheduled for this year to do tickets for the 1940s World Series when the Reds won in 1940, but the COVID killed that. We have historical things on display. For example, right here we have the actual hand type cut out by Darius Wells, and would not have known that if it wasn't for Jim. Jim was down here visiting Cincinnati. Well, really was doing is scooping down Cincinnati and stealing all the woodcuts from Cincinnati Enquirer, so we couldn't get them, but that's okay. And while he was doing that, he came into the museum and he looked at some of my type and he goes, "Hey, Gare, this is really valuable." I said, "It is? I just got it from a little old lady." I did. A little old lady called me up and said, "Hey, I got this furniture. Do you want it?" And I went over and there it was. And he says, "This is actually created by Darius Wells." And he flips over the letter A, and lo and behold, there is Wells stamped in there. Well, we immediately put that in the display case, made a little sign for it, and that is one of our prized possessions today. So thank you, Jim, for that. We have forgiven you for taking all the letterpress plates, but that's okay. We still love you.
Good to know.
So we've been in the newspaper. Channel 12 here, local Channel 12 did a great story on us. And so we just get calls from people, or so one of Jacob's neighbors happened to have this print hanging on her wall. She actually had the plate. So if you look on the right side of that plate, she had it hanging on her wall. And it's the view of the bridge over the Ohio River. I think, if I remember right, this is the 1939 flood. So we brought it in, cleaned it up, and you can see reproduce the print, and we're going to do a whole bunch more of those and just give those out to people as they come into the museum. One of my donors, and the museum, by the way, is funded by donors, was really into his grandkids and said, "You know, I bring the kids to the museum. I think you should have something for them." So we have little tiny presses from the print. But then you got me thinking about it, like, go online. I went online and found all these cool toy presses. So in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you could buy your kids for Christmas a little printing press. And here they all are. So we're going to have a neat display of this. The one that's at the two at the bottom, they're probably from 1920, 1930. Very, very old. So those won't be functioning. But the one that's in the yellow and the red, that one actually works. And we're probably going to actually have to set up and let kids actually print off of that little press. Another friend from Columbus called me up, and he had bound copies of Inland Printer Magazine and American Printer Magazine dating back all the way to 1932. So this is a huge collection and a huge gift to the museum. What's kind of cool when you go back to the magazine of 1932, they're talking about the Ludlow machine, they're talking about the Intertype machine, they're talking about the Vandercook presses and how cool they are and how you have to have one. You know, that is kind of like where we are right now. We want those things right now. You know, you look at these old magazines they have promoting that and telling you all the advantages. The museum's purpose is really to get people excited about printing. So one of the things we're adding to the museum is you come and see all the old stuff, but also we're going to talk about what printing is today. And the next big, huge wave of technology is something called printing electronics. So what you see here is something we printed. This is actually a piano keyboard, which is attached to an electronic device, which is attached to a computer. If you take your hands and touch those keys, music will come out of there. So that keyboard was 100% printed with ink on paper. There is nothing else there, just ink on paper. In 5 years, we'll be printing antennas, solar panels, conductors, battery. Battery is nothing but layers of materials. And you notice how batteries are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, just layers of material. Just as you lay down your 4 colors, you lay down an acid, a base, some other chemicals, and so forth. We'll be printing batteries. Your iPhone, if you have an iPhone 14, when it comes out, half of it will be printed on printing presses. So your actual presses, your letterpress presses, if you do some research, you could actually print electronic images, okay, things that will actually light up rooms and so forth. And that's the future of printing, which is, it's going to be huge. I just hope some of the old goats learn about it and get involved with it. So it's just not all the young people who jump on and get all the money. That's the problem with old people. They don't always like to change with new technology. The second purpose is, and we're not there yet, but we're getting there, is to be an environment for artists to come to make handmade paper and to print letterpress items. So we had one artist who came in and did some printing. We did make paper last year. We were going to do a really big time this year, but then the COVID hit, so that kind of got postponed. But our goal was to have a facility where we're actually manufacturing a lot of handmade paper to actually be able to sell that. Okay, but we do want to be a place for artists to come and play and create posters and so forth. In one of the Hamilton hangs, 2 young ladies out in Washington, Star Press? No, that's not it. That's not it. Spring Press. They were doing posters.
Springtide Press.
Springtide Press, yes. And I'm thinking that's exactly what I want to do. I want artists to come in and create posters like that. My second love is gardening and eating healthy. So, if we could do posters that would help people really think about what they put in their bodies and the type of food they're eating, that would be great. I mean, so it'd be 2 things in one, and we need the art community to be able to do that. So the second purpose is to be an environment for artists to come play. We want to have classes like on how to make woodcuts. We're very blessed that because of my first, second, and third quarter, all the papers donated to the museum for free, all the inks donated to the museum for free. I have such good buddies. I just call them up and say, hey, I need this. Someone the other day was asking, how did you get all this equipment? Just my buddies, I go to their shops and go, what do you got old? We got nothing old. Yeah, you do. You got something old. No, we don't got nothing old. I'm going to go in the back and see if you got anything old. Well, you go back there, there's nothing back there. And sure enough, I go back there, take pictures. There's an old press, old type or whatever. And I come in and I say, you got this. They go, we do? I said, yeah, but I'll be here tomorrow. I'll pick it up and it'll be gone. I get it out of your place. And I'm not kidding you. That's how we got most of our stuff. So those connections in the first and second, third quarter really paid off. Stole this, I think, from Globe. Is that right? One of the Globe Press or something. I don't know. So we did for this year celebrating the theme this whole year has been women in print, and we celebrate the 100th anniversary. So we did these posters, and they were extremely successful. Mailed them all out. We just sent them, give away for free, and they're all gone. So that was one of the neat things we did for our community. Okay, and then also following Globe again this year we did the Your Vote Counts, and again all gone. Put them on LinkedIn, put them on Facebook, all gone. And so it comes down to our third purpose and the most important one of all, the reason why we're here. Our goal is to break the cycle of addiction by providing training, jobs, and dignity to women of Price Hill. We are partnering with an organization called Block Ministry, whose goal is to flip this community, Price Hill, to being a good working class community and not being the poorest community in Cincinnati. And we're doing it one person at a time. And so there's 37 different programs in the Block Ministries. We're one of them. And so we take young ladies, and this happens to be the card that Ashley, my very first one, did, where she designed that card, made the plates, printed it. And I'm happy to say Ashley's doing extremely well. She's married, has 2 kids, and is no longer addicted to heroin. We've run through 25 young ladies. I'm sad to say 12 of them are back on the streets. That heroin is a nasty drug. Hopefully this time next year, we're also going to have a program for men and be doing flexographic training, which is a little bit like letterpress, but it's a plastic plate instead of a metal plate. But there's a high need here in Cincinnati for flexo operators. So I can train these men and start them out at $15, $18 an hour with benefits. So that's one of our goals. with the museum. And so it's a three-part, it's three main purposes, okay? Like I say, partnering with Block Ministry to flip this community. Here's our ladies. So this is the batch that we have now. And the stories they can tell you about their life, you just wouldn't believe. And when you first meet them, they're just normal people. But then they tell your stories and your heart just breaks, you know? And so not only do I get to do cool printing, it's very fulfilling and rehabilitating these young ladies and hoping to do that also with men. In the future, like I say, need that third building. I've got these two machines sitting in warehouses. We have a really nice Davidson press, a really nice Heidelberg cylinder press. I need to get them into the museum. These are the ones I'm going to use for the training for the men. If you can run these presses, you can pretty well run an offset press or a flexo press. So that's another reason why I've got to get them into the museum. And just recently, I can't tell you who it is, but we've locked on to a gentleman who his basement is a museum. And he has agreed to loan us this Franklin press, which goes back to 1776. So we started talking about the Declaration of Independence. You know, this press would have been the type that would have maybe printed that. You know, it's a beauty, and we hope to have that here in about another 2 months. Also, we are working on getting we've got 2 Ludlam machines that are functioning, and we're working on right now getting either 2 inner types or a linotype, and we'll just see how that plays out. And that's my presentation. Any questions?
You have people floored, Gary. People are loving learning about it. Your passion and enthusiasm comes through so nicely, even online. Jim has his hand up.
First, a comment in that Cincinnati has it should have a printing museum because it has such an incredible printing tradition, which extends to paper and type foundries, etc. So that said, and you knowing a lot of people with equipment, do you find that there's a surplus that you would like to channel, you know, to others that may need it?
Absolutely. I have 4 companies right now that want to give me equipment, and I just don't have the room for it. And also, I don't need any more channel presses. I don't need any more stones. I don't need more furniture. So yeah, if anybody's interested in some equipment, I can set you up with some people right now. Now it's going to cost you a little money to move it, but I can set you up, and they'll give it to you if you'll just haul it away. So yes. I assume, Stephanie, you will kind of like post my email and my. Yeah.
I've done your website and your Facebook, but we can definitely post your email. I'll be happy to do that. Yeah, that's happy to do it.
Or Stephanie, do you have any chats that you need to read to me?
Well, let people know they can unmute because I think people were kind of just inspired by everything instead of asking questions. So I'm sure they've been formulating. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask out loud. That's no problem. That's why we're here to have conversations. So.
Gary, do you mind answering again about current staff that you've got on hand there?
So it started with just me, and then I've had a lot of interns. But when it comes to full-time staff, so Jacob is our full-time courier. We have recently hired a young lady. I can't give you her name because she's one of our Redeemed girls. And our goal is that she will be in charge of the training. It's better to have a woman. It's better to have women training women with addiction than have a man around. And also then Jacob and I can then focus on the training we want to do for the men. So at the moment we have 2 full-time employees and then a half-time employee. I do have a lot of volunteers.
Is it all volunteer, or so there must be some funding from somewhere, right? Is that primarily from you, or are people making cash contributions, or?
So we do have a membership. So we do have people who join the museum, and by joining the museum, you get some of the stuff the girls print. So you get like free greeting cards, you get free wrapping paper, you get our newsletter, which comes out 3 times a year. You get to come. The museum is free. As long as I can, I want it to be free. A lot of poor folks don't go to museums because they can't afford it. So I don't want that ever to be the case. It's always going to be free. Right now, I have probably 10 individuals who I've been able to convince that this is a worthy thing, and so they're funding me. And I'm happy to say that we're in the black. We are doing well, very, very well. So I think that's a gift that, I didn't mention this, but when I taught at Cincinnati State, I'm in my first year and we got nothing. I mean, nothing. And I'm looking around at the other big colleges, and that was RIT, and they've got everything. I mean, they got the big presses, they got everything. And so I called them and said, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "Well, you got to get the industry people involved and so forth, and you got to get your state involved." So I called the state, and they so willingly gave me $1,000. I laughed. I thought, "What am I going to do with $1,000?" I actually remember telling the dean, I said, "Give that to the horticulture program. They can use it more than I did." And the horticulture program wrote me a letter and thanked me for that. "I'm so glad you gave me $1,000." I'm looking at cutters that are $30,000, presses that are $150,000. So then I started dealing relations with printers, and I got really good at getting people to feel guilty. And so when I left Cincinnati State, we had over $2 million worth of stuff donated. So that's kind of a gift I believe God has given me. And the same thing is carried over here. I've just been able to convince people that you should support us. And that's been working out pretty well.
Do you find yourself competing with the other print museums, or working collaboratively with them, or just not having anything to do with them, or what?
Oh, no. I never want to. We're all brothers. I love Hamilton wood type. I love all the different museums. I'd be happy to give them presses and stuff like that. There's plenty of room for all of us. And I've learned, so I've been going back and watching the Hamilton hangs. I think I've watched 15 of them. And you pick up things, and so that's the beauty of, someday I believe there'll be an association of letterpress museums. So we're here in Cincinnati. We're in the museum site of Greater Cincinnati organization, where all the museums here in Cincinnati get together once a month, and we just have conversations, talk about it. And I've learned so much from that. And someday I hope that same thing will be for Letterpress Museum. There'll be an association just for us, and the problems that we deal with and the issues that we deal with. And when you can get together and share ideas, it's just wonderful. And then when I was teaching, there was the Graphic Arts Teachers Union, our association, excellent group of men and women. Many of them, surprisingly, like the museum in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia was started by one of the graphic arts instructors. Many of Frank Romano, the one that he has. So definitely not a competition. We're all brothers in the same thing. Any other questions?
Well, and I think that is a really good idea, because I know we are part of, Jim, we're part of the Association of European Printing Museums, correct? And we were the first US-based museum to be a part of that group. And I know Jim and Bill you've participated a lot with them, right, Jim? And it's been very helpful.
Well, yeah, and we were the first non-European member, but it was kind of them to broaden their scope, and they've broadened a lot.
Ooh, there is a really good question. Tom wants to know, he says he's old. I don't think he's that old, but he says he wants to know a little more about the technology that allows the interaction with the electronic device. Is it a special ink? Can you tell us more?
All the magic is in the ink. So Sun Chemical has invested hugely in this technology. Like I say, all the magic is in the ink. So your printing presses don't change a bit. Your paper doesn't change a bit. You might be printing on plastic now, or actually printing on a hard plastic or some other type of substrate. But all the magic is in the ink. There's actually, if you want to know more, go online. There's a magazine called Printing Electronics Now. And most of the stories, when you read them, will blow your mind. But for example, there's just little pieces are coming out and so forth. So last year at the Olympics, all the American participants were wearing jackets that were printing electronics. So they actually had built-in heating elements, solar panels on their jackets that kept them warm. And that was printing electronics. It's heavy in the automobile industry. It's going to be heavy in the medical industry. The agricultural industry are now going to be able to print instruments very cheaply on paper to put in the ground. So like now they put one in maybe for 1 acre. Now we print that same thing on a piece of paper on a cardstock, and they could put 100 of them on an acre to know where the moisture factor is and so forth. So tremendous amount of research going on that. If you got $5,000 every year, there's a conference in California called Printing Electronics. And you can go there and take workshops. You actually see live demonstrations of products that are being printed by Printing Electronics. It's going to be huge, and you'll hear more and more about it as the time goes on. So that's why in the museum, I want to have a nice display. I want to actually have a device where you touch the wall and it lights up. The piano where you can actually play the keyboards and so forth. And like I say, and as each year goes by, more and more of that electronic device will be printed and less will be done mechanically. That's why the iPhone is in China, is because they're doing all that hand labor. And I don't know if you remember, but in 2016, Trump said he's going to bring the manufacturing of the iPhone back to the United States. He wasn't. We, the printing industry, are, because we can print now 20 of those up on a sheet at one time, going 20,000 copies an hour. Now we're, and that whole, why are we doing all this? The price drops drastically. We're going to still sell you that iPhone for $1,000, but it only costs us $500 to make it. You know, so did that answer your question?
Yep. Thanks. That was awesome.
And along those lines, Justin wants to know, can you speak to any news or updates in the 3D printing field? Are you doing anything with that?
Oh yeah, so many years ago, I shouldn't say many years ago, we actually bought a I shouldn't say bought, I got a printer to buy me a 3D printer. First thing I saw when I looked at it, I went like, gosh, why didn't I invent this? It's called a printer because they took the model of an inkjet printer, and instead of spitting out ink, it spits out plastic, and then have an elevator, so it prints a layer, and then the elevator drops to give the third dimension, and then just builds up on that. And you look at this thing and go like, if I had invented this is so simple. I could have made a fortune. You know, definitely have a place. I mean, a lot of printers invested in it at first, but it never really worked out for us. And then print electronics hit, and that's when we realized that's our niche market. You know, but definitely 3D printing is the way to go. You know, I believe 30 years from now, you're going to go into the store to have your lawnmower repaired, and you're going to need a part. So instead of going back and looking at the racks for all the parts, you'll go, give me 20 minutes here, bud. And he'll go over there and make that part for and hand it to you. So at the college, we have both the plastic and the metal 3D printers. And so it's definitely a way of the future. But I don't think it's, at least in my opinion, we printers couldn't really use it for anything.
There's some good questions about the direction that the museum is going to go. Hans says a metal 3D printing is used to create rocket motors now. So that's interesting. Somebody wanted to know, what activities and events do you envision at the museum in the future? I know we're having issues with, we don't know where COVID is going to take us. So I know that's an issue here. I'd love to hear more about kind of events and activities you guys are thinking about.
So last year, 2019, we did some work with homeschools, and that was a blast. Little kids just loved it. This year we were at Christmas time, going to be a big display about the Christmas Carol. Actually, maybe print a page of the Christmas Carol, but have people dressed up in costumes. And I just think that would have been a huge success, but we had to can all that. Do want to do a big celebration around Ben Franklin. The problem is he was born in the winter months, you know, so going to do like Ben's, I can't remember how old he is. We'll say his 150th half birthday. So that puts it somewhere in April, you know. And then the cool part, when Ben was born, they actually changed the calendar. So we can either do it on the 6th or the 17th. So depending upon how that falls, we could do that. And I think we still might do that this coming spring. But I was going to do that this year, but canceled that. The Reds event, I was really hoping we could do that. That would have been huge, but they canceled that. And then they're not going to win the World Series again until 1975. So I got to think that through, you know. Other events, we're always open for tours for groups of people. We are giving tours for families right now. So if you're a family, we'll let you come in. And we give tours for individuals. So this morning I gave a tour for one person. And that was cool. Could be a donor someday. So that's cool. That's how I look at it. Everybody I bring in could be a donor someday. Could be a member someday, you know. So that's kind of the things we do. I want to encourage you, if you give me your home address, send me your home address, I will put you on our mailing list and you will get our newsletter so you know what we're doing and the events that we're doing and so forth. So just, you've got the information there, email me your home address and you'll immediately get on. You'll even get our Christmas, which is coming out here soon. You'll get our Christmas newsletter.
That's very kind of you. Printers love to have that kind of stuff. You talked a little bit about it. Work with kids. Have you done or planning to do more? I love the flexo printing with gentlemen in the future. I think that's really exciting. But somebody did want to know if you do things with kids and if you plan to in the future.
So I think in the homeschool curriculum, they do talk about, you know, writing and the scribes. And so we do a big thing about Gutenberg and the scribe. We hope someday to actually have a full-size wooden press in the lobby. That'll become our showpiece that we'll have. And so we talk about that. We talk about, we animate it when we tell them about being a scribe, about how is it at 10 years old, you would have been picked out if you had good penmanship and that kind of stuff. And we just kind of things like that, a variety of things for kids. We have them actually get on the little presses and print, and they love that. They just love it. And I tell them they have to wave the paper so it'll dry. And so you'll have 20 kids, they're all going like this, it's kind of cool. But the parents love it too, and then when they leave, anybody leaves the museum, we leave with stuff, So one of the things I'm working on is some games that we'll create for them. So when we're back up doing tours again with families, we'll be doing that.
Yeah, you guys are doing great work. I knew just the edge of what you were working on. So I love getting these updates. Does anybody, I have one more question, but if anybody has questions and you want to unmute, please feel free. Somebody asked if the Cincinnati kind of printer community, like are the printers in the area supportive of what you guys are doing there?
Absolutely. Very supportive. And I created my first newsletter for them so that they would know what's going on. And they are, besides the foundation that I have that's supporting me, they would be the next largest supporters. Yeah, and again, the ones who support me the most are the ones I built relationships with. I did have the privilege of training over 3,600 students, who many of them are working for these printers. And so that helped build that bond. So when I say, hey, I need you to do this, they kind of feel a little bit, they're looking at the money they're making it go off my students. And so I think that has something to do with why they say yes, to me. So yes.
Relationship building is so important.
Oh, huge. That's why I like to give everything away for free. Yeah.
Well, when the paper and ink comes in for free, it helps, right?
Right. The presses are all free. We don't buy anything down here. I actually so Block has a screen printing shop. Block has a coffee shop. Block has a wood shop where they do this exact same thing we're doing and so forth. But I was sitting with the finance person the other day, and she goes, you have no expenses. I said, I know, I get everything free. She's free, And she says, how are you doing this? And I said, it's a God thing. He just gives me everything,
Well, that is definitely how Hamilton started. We paid $1 a year for our space. That is not the case anymore. But it sure does help you get started. That's for sure.
Now I do pay rent. I pay a big rent, but I'm happy to pay it because it's going to Block. So Block is the owner of this building.
Nice.
So I do pay rent, but I feel like I'm just helping the cause when I pay rent. So I don't mind that a bit. I'm happy to pay rent. I really am. As a matter of fact, someday I hope I make so much money that I can pay a high price for the rent. I want to double what I'm paying them now. That's my goal.
Yeah, spread that love, right? It's again shown to you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we? Somebody asked what Block is. Block was the ministry group, right? That you that help support what you do there.
So 21 years ago, a guy named Dwight Young and his wife Stephanie Young started working with inner city school kids, and it's mushroomed into a program now where we have the industry training part that I'm a part of, which is rehabilitating the people of this community. We have after school programs. We have houses where so the girls, to really get a young lady off of heroin, it's not a 2-year program, it's a 12-year program. So after they're doing the training, we get them a job, we get them an apartment that we own, and they pay like $200 a month, dirt cheap, but they get this really nice apartment, they can have it for 10 years, okay? And then so we don't have anybody that we have to kick out yet because it hasn't been 10 years. But you gotta be committed for that long period of time to truly break that cycle. We have houses for boys to live in, houses for girls to live in who are having problems with their families. We have a weightlifting program. We have a program called Girls Wanted, which is designed to keep them off the streets, talk about when they're 12 and 13, 14, about how valuable they are. And they're not just something that some guy can have fun with. I mean, so, and I'm missing a lot. We have a food pantry. We I should write all these 37 things down. So when someone asks me, I can tell them all that, you know. But
Jacob
it's a
did
great-
share the link too, so that's nice. People can go
Okay.
and definitely see the whole breadth.
So I don't get paid. I don't get paid. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I believe in what these folks are doing. Block stands for, you can go online and find out what it stands for. When I first came on board, I thought it stood for this, because I was told if I became a paid employee, I would have to live in this community. Now think about that for a minute. These are people who are going to help people, but they're not going to do a hit and run. They're not going to come in and then go out. They're living there. So Jordan and his wife, Alexis, I met them first, and they're living on State Street. To his left was a drug dealer. To his right was a prostitute. And he's raising his family in this community. Now that's somebody who really want to make a difference. And I was sold from that point on. And every block staff person lives in Price Hill. I'd move here in a heartbeat. Move here in a heartbeat. My wife doesn't want to live here. She doesn't want to live in the poorest community. And since I don't get paid, I don't have to. So, so great organization. Great organization. Very proud to be part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, people are amazed at the synergy and the energy between the cultural institutions and the mission as well. So sweet.
Yeah, it is. I think I'm the only one that's doing this. I think, you know, in California there is, and I modeled my program, just so you know, this isn't my creation. I modeled my program after Homeboys, which is in California, and they have a bakery and they have a screen printing shop. So, so the third part is modeled after them.
You've got some love for Homeboys over in the chat. So
Great organization. Great organization. Someday I would like to be as good as them.
we all help build our communities. So I think you're doing really great work, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions, either in the chat or you can unmute?
Gary, I'm trying to remember if you noted when you first printed, when you first got ink on your hands.
1968, 8th grader at Schwab Junior High School.
And that was it.
Nothing broke. Remember those other classes, everything broke? Nothing broke. Got an A for the class. But yeah, I liked it. I liked running that press. And so, I forgot to mention my greatest honor that I ever got. I mean, I've gotten a lot of awards. I've served on national committees, and I'm only telling you this so I can tell you what my greatest honor was. In the 9th grade, I was Printer of the Year for Schwab Junior High School. And I wish I still had that little piece of paper, because that is the most cherished possession I have, because that's how it all started. It's Schwab Junior High School. So I'm a big promoter. We need to bring back shop classes. Big promoter of that.
I didn't take any of the home ec classes. I only went to shop classes as well for all of middle school. It was exactly where I wanted to be. So I fully support that. Do you mind if I introduce Jacob? I see that he's here with us, and I thought it would be a really nice way to
Go ahead.
say we're so excited about the whole community. So Jacob, we're glad you're here.
Hello, it's great to be here. I'm just quietly, following the chat, enjoying what everybody has to say.
Yeah, you've done a good job of helping keep up with the when people are asking questions. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about what you do there?
Yeah, so I'm the museum assistant director and curator. So my background is actually not in printing. I started in the printing business in February of this year when I met Gary, when I started working here. And as you can imagine, February of this year was probably not the best time to start a new job, but I'm very thankful to be working here. And basically my background is in museums. For the last 10 years, I've worked for museums and historic sites in North Carolina and Tennessee. So I came on board to help run the museum side of things and to monitor the collection, just kind of, see what's going on from that side. So Gary and I, in that sense, make a very good team.
It almost always takes a team. It's never one person.
Yes.
So I'm really glad you're there. Oh, that's great.
He's a gift from God. I keep telling everybody that. I mean, he just came to me, and I was stupid enough and I hired him. And every day I tell him, I'm so blessed to have you. I'm so blessed to have you. And just so you know, Stephanie, I know Jim says the same thing about you.
Yeah, we've been working together 9 years now. So
Mhm.
yeah, we're very lucky to find the right communities. That's for darn sure.
Now, see,
Jacob?
Jim, I've been so nice to Stephanie, been so nice to you. So what I'm hoping you're going to do is say, you know what? I got to take care of Gary Walton. I'm going to find 4 plates from that collection and send it down there so he can print those for the folks in Cincinnati.
Well, there's a project.
We'll talk about that later.
All right.
I might even be willing to pay.
Jacob, do you do much printing then at the museum?
I do. So part of what I do is try to print things and come up with little projects just so I can figure out the process, because it's not something I grew up with. So Gary, first off, he put me on a little Kelsey, and then I graduated to a pedal powered Chandler and Price. And then we've got the larger electric Chandler and Price, the show card press. So I'm getting very familiar very quickly. And on one hand, COVID actually helped with that because I have time to be in the museum by myself and just try things out.
I imagine with your background, there's a lot of things that you have learned a bit about, right?
Yes.
He's a jack of all trades. And he's a decent printer too.
Well, and you had talked about having some things, like things come your way and making sure they get into the right hands. Did you talk much about that, Gary?
Well, right now I have 4 printing companies who have contacted me, and they have complete shops that they want to unload. And I just don't have room for it, And then a lot of it's, I don't need any more Chandler presses. I don't need any more type drawers. I don't need any more. Now wood type, we'll take wood type. So yeah, I would love to be able to just say, hey, contact this person, and they'll be interested in taking some of that stuff. So I have a person in Cleveland, and we got one somewhere else, but we're going to take his stuff. So I can't give you his name.
Well, we put your email over there. I just wanted to make sure that everybody heard that part, because it's this is the right group for making those connections.
Yeah.
So
Well, it would be nice if the museum could benefit from making those connections, and as you probably know, the some of those larger presses, even the Mealy verticals, are a little tough to sell because they're heavy, and not a lot of people are really adept at them. On the other hand, Vandercooks are pretty easy to run, and you can take top dollar for them. But I think it would be nice if you're funneling that equipment, that there could be at least a percentage for the museum for making that link.
I'd rather just be a good neighbor and just give it to them. I don't want to make any money.
Mhm.
Now, speaking of making money though, I was just wondering, and this is a good place to talk about this. What if we started manufacturing again Vandercook presses? There's nothing to the machine. It's a simple machine.
Except that Chris Klink actually tried to figure out what to do, and I think Hal Stern before him tried to figure out what it would cost to do that. And the answer is, by the time you got the tooling done and the presses, it turned out to be a very, very expensive operation that really was beyond the viable, unfortunately. A great idea, but not
I have
viable.
friends at Heidelberg. I have some friends at Heidelberg. And when I was just thinking, if I told them that these things are selling for $9,000, $10,000 a piece, I don't know, they might go,
Gary, you're an indefatigable entrepreneur, and I absolutely love it. And speaking as another entrepreneur who is a printer type person over here, I love the enthusiasm, but also speaking as somebody who has been playing around in space, trying to figure out entrepreneurial ways to do things. Okay. That probably is one bridge too far. You're doing a great job so far. So let's keep going in that area.
I have seen people doing tabletop presses, but they are overseas. I can see if I can find that link, because we have found that show card presses or tabletop flatbed presses are really nice for teaching in workshops because it's a really low learning curve. So that's been one of the things we figured out too. So I've been intrigued to see if they're affordable enough, especially with a grant, if that's something that we can,
Yeah, and I hate to be a wet blanket over here, but American Printing Equipment and Supply Corp imported a number of tabletops from India that they would sell, but those are sort of those cheap red ones. The pilots are wonderful, except to actually do a pilot and cast the parts and sell. By the time you finish getting a pilot remanufactured, you'd have to sell it for more than you can buy a pilot for today, on the market. And there is stuff out there. And while it would be wonderful to think that there are thousands of us who are just dying to spend $20,000 on a Vandercook or whatever, in the real world, it doesn't quite work that way. So much as I would love it to.
Yes.
But colleges might be willing to spend that kind of money.
No, they want. Okay, I will tell you a quick story. So when American Printing Equipment, so back when I was rehabbing all the presses at Yale, I was a printer, so I learned to print when I was at Yale, and Yale had 14 letterpress shops, 14 separate working, teaching letterpress shops, the world's biggest group of letterpress presses in existence when I was there. And so as an alumni, when I came back and I had a little bit of cash one time, they were going through a whole rehab of Yale University, and they were going to throw out all the presses because this was this old big thing. And I staged intervention and got all these alums to come back in and say, you can't do that, you can't do that. So Yale agreed to let me rehab some of these presses. So I went to American Printing Equipment and Supply Corp in Long Island City, who some of you may recall, Max Mandel, to pick up some new type cabinets. They were the last new letterpress supply operation. And so I had my little shopping list of things that I wanted to get. And as I'm doing this, Max Mandel says, how about if we gave you some of this stuff? And I said, oh, that'd be really cool. And how much do you want to give us? And he said, how much do you want? And I said, well, I'll take everything you want to give me. He said, okay, how about you take the whole building because we're gonna close down. And so I said, whoa, that sounds great. So I called up Yale and I called the provost and I said, guess what? I just arranged for a donation of $2 million worth of brand new letterpress printing equipment for all the presses. To which there's like silence. Then the provost of Yale University says, David, are you out of your fucking mind? Having done that, but so in any event, so being an entrepreneurial type like you, I actually ended up doing the entire thing. So Roy D'Adamo, who some of you may know, and Theo Rehack, who some of you may know, and I basically pulled out the entire American Printing Equipment and Supply Corp up to New Haven. It took us 17 trucks, an entire summer, pulled the entire thing up to New Haven, and I had this warehouse that I got Yale to loan me for a year that we filled with this kind of stuff. And so we rehabbed all the presses at Yale, and then the warehouse was still full. So I took out an 8-page insert in the printer, which some of you may remember, the newspaper, for the Great American Letterpress Renaissance, designed for every type museum and type shop in the country. And I said, great, as long as you belong to any 2 organizations, any of the 2 museums or the Roller Club or whatever it is, you can come in and get 90% off the last list price of all the stuff there. And so we photographed all the stuff, and we had people come from all over the country with trucks and stuff, and most of the East Coast letterpress shops and colleges were stocked out of that operation. But when they all left after a month of this open house sale there, the place was still full. And so I thought, okay, now I got a real problem. So I then, called, Fritz Klinke out at NA Graphics. And I said, Fritz, I got a full warehouse of the stuff over there. I have the makings of 3,000 type cases with all of the rails and all the everything over there. And I have miles of furniture ready to be cut. So Fritz, as a wonderful guy, basically sent a semi-trailer and took all my stuff back to NA Graphics. And the warehouse was still full. So at this point, I'm beginning to panic because I have this full warehouse. So I called Don Black up in Canada, and I said, Don, I've got all these presses that I can't get rid of. I can't give them away. I can't pay for it. What do I do? So Don sent his son, unfortunately just died, down with another semi-trailer, and I put all of these presses and stones and turtles and cabinets and everything into this truck and got him back up to Canada. And the the warehouse was still full. So at this point, though, having basically found every freaking letterpress printer in the United States of America and probably up and down the East Coast, the stuff that was left was sort of like iron furniture and so on and so forth. And some of these old presses, these Indian presses that people really didn't want and I couldn't even give away. So we ended up, the last residue of this stuff was junk. So as somebody who has done what you are trying to do, believe me when I say, as much as a few of us would love to pick up these wonderful pieces of equipment because we have big iron disease, which many of us on this call undoubtedly know about, it would probably behoove us to be a little bit conservative in what we think we can do. So
Never,
anyway, sorry.
never. We're going to take over the world, David. No, I'm just kidding. I want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. This was an absolute wonderful way to spend an afternoon. Gary, thank you. Learned so much. I know we'll work together in the future. And Jacob, thank you for speaking up as well. It was really nice to meet you. And being able to tell these stories and share what you do is so important. So thank you so much for being here today. I will say a quick thing. We're taking a break next week because it's Thanksgiving. I hope you all stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good Thanksgiving. I'm going to relax for a day. I thought, oh, it'd be fun. We could all get together. No, I think it's time to, so we're going to take a break. I will say, though, the next one coming up is going to be so cool, and I'm being so nerdy about it. So if you haven't looked to the future, we do have on December 4th, Julie Chen of Flying Fish Press, and her work is so stunning and so outstanding, and I'm going to try my hardest not to fangirl because her work is so amazing. So I've put a link over in the side. If you haven't registered for Julie's, please do. And also, we always want to say thank you so much for everyone's support. One of the ways that we keep these Hamilton Hangs going is by memberships. So if you have not become a member and you can become a member, we ask that you do so because it's a really wonderful way to help make these happen. I'm starting to charge up for 2021. So we have dates through the end of the year, but I'd love to be, because this isn't ending and we're still online and we love seeing you. So I'm going to start to get some dates for 2021 on the calendar. I already have some conversations happening. So that is the end of the day. We're right at 1 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for everyone who spoke up. David, that was a wonderful, lovely story to round it out. And I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Gary.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.